Page order 705. Hi folks, we're bringing this meeting to order. So this is a public hearing tonight, but we do have some business to take care of with one applicant. So we'd like to hear that person's application first and take care of business for the Barnetts. But for your reference though, if you would like, there are some printed copies of the draft commercial development review orders.
Hasn't changed since the last time I was here?
I think it has not changed.
Okay, alright.
Yeah. So you're all set. So, first order of business, the Barnetts, Leo and Rose. Does everybody have a copy of the application?
Is it just 2 pages?
Yeah. Leo Barnett just bought the property on Pinkham's Cove that was formerly Tank Austin's house, if you know where that is.
Yeah.
Okay.
What his proposal is to actually tear the house down and replace the house the exact same size on the same foundation, because the foundation's in decent shape.
Yeah, it's a poured concrete.
And also to take the roof off the garage and replace the roof on the garage, not tear down the building, but that part of it redo.
And so, this is a non-conforming structure? or
Yeah.
Non-conforming.
It's 40 feet from the highway line. It's a non-conforming lot as well.
Okay. All right. Super.
I take it the deck is gonna be new too, that's been replaced as the existing deck?
Correct,
Okay.
yeah.
How many stories is this now, and how many stories is it gonna be afterwards?
It's only
It's 1 story.
It's the same square footage,
Right, we're not changing the footprint.
1186 square feet, and then the deck is 360.
So that's why the floor area and the footprint are designated as the same?
Yes, same foundation.
So basically, the garage, the roof is gonna come off completely and then the new.
Yeah, it's sort of a
Choice.
flat roof now,
Mhm.
and I wanna, take, it has sort of like a curtain on it, take that off and then just put trusses.
Mhm.
There's probably a 412 or 512 pitch, so add maybe 4 feet to the height of the garage.
Take it the garage right now is only, 10 feet or so?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, the garage is structurally sound,
Mhm.
it's just that they're, it's pretty much flat roof,
Mhm.
so we get a pitched roof on it. And then the house is actually solid too, it's just that it's old and outdated
Mhm.
and inefficient.
The area that's designated as front on your drawing, I don't know if it's a porch or it's towards the road, not towards the lake. Is that gonna be in that same location when you rebuild it?
Correct, yep,
That's same size too.
yep, that was included in this. garage.
And likewise for the deck, the
Correct,
partial wraparound?
Yeah.
Essentially, we've got the same dimensions, except it's new.
It's just new, when Leo looked at it, he said, it's probably
Mhm.
easier to rebuild than update.
Yeah.
well, unfortunately, when you have old, you always have old, no matter what you do to it,
Right.
and I
Whether
wanna,
it's wiring, plumbing, whatever, insulation.
by
might be.
the time you cut it out and do everything, the roof on the house is actually gonna come off too. So at that point, what do you have left? All the windows and doors are like
Old.
old. Yeah.
And you're not planning any earth moving, is that correct?
Nope,
And the septic system, what's the status on that, Gary?
It's existing, it's up here by the road.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be upgraded or anything.
No, they're not changing the number of bedrooms or anything.
Nope.
And the final product, speaking of roofs, you mentioned before, both on the house and the garage, which way will that they be oriented? So will the gable ends be towards the lake and towards the road, or
Correct, it'll be exactly the same.
Okay, so then the drip edges, one will be towards your neighbor and the other towards the garage?
Correct,
And then on the garage side, would it be
the same,
the same orientation as with the house?
correct.
Okay.
And we'll install it.
Also, okay, so you use gutters? You, okay.
That raises a good point, is how to deal with the stormwater coming off the two new roofs now.
Right,
Normally, we require as a condition of approval, dealing with that stormwater by means other than by gutters, so it's not being directed to the lake. Either, drip line infiltration areas or rain gardens or something like that, so that that water is not making its way to the lake anymore. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that, but if not, we'll approve it with a condition requiring that.
We're not, the roof on the house is, it's a pitched roof now, so.
Right.
We'll do whatever we need to do to.
Yeah, I mean, easiest usually is, it seems like for most people, is to put the infiltration gravel along the drip line.
Crushed stone.
So
Crushed
you
stone.
prefer that over
Gutters.
gutters?
Yeah, because gutters usually collect all the water and direct it at a fast rate towards the lake,
Well, that's
which
fine.
can infiltrate into the ground.
yeah. It works out well. I think from a building perspective, but maybe ask Mr. Alexander, but a lot of people will wonder why they did gutters after they did. So,
What about the soil composition? If it's hard pan clay, and then all that water's gonna go to the lake anyways if it pitches in that direction.
It's all gravel right there.
The way these systems are built, though, you have sand underneath the crushed rock, so, it infiltrates, it's not gonna run across the surface unless you have a really severe storm event.
Yeah, well, I had a situation, every rainstorm did it without gutters. The gutters at least controlled where it went.
Yep.
And I was able to divert it away from the lake.
so you had success in that situation?
Yeah, I put a cistern in.
That,
And that's fine if you have someplace, that's not lawn, where the water can infiltrate, but a lot of people don't. Particularly in small lots like this, where you're right on top of the lake.
Sometimes you can send it into the woods.
Yeah, you can send it into the woods if you had that option, but most of the projects we see don't have that option.
the idea of, in my opinion, the idea of the cistern is excellent.
I don't have any concerns as such. The only concern is, it's not really, I guess it's a concern or whatever, is that I would feel more comfortable if Leo would be able to put on the application that we don't have any, there's nothing on here that shows what the vertical or side view or what the
Right,
house is
yeah.
gonna look like. So right now, it just says replace it with same footprint or whatever, but it would be, in my mind, it'd be good if Leo could put on there that the dimensions of the house, walls or whatever, would be the same, and it'll be one-story structure,
Height.
so that we.
Height
I think that's
and profile would be the
and
same.
If we get the profile on here, I'm
Yeah,
absolutely no
right,
problem.
or photos.
Yeah. Yeah, do you,
So you want photos of what's existing now?
Well, or I think what Rich is suggesting, adding a statement to your application that's saying it's gonna be rebuilt as is, including in terms of profile and height. Because it's clear that it's gonna be the same footprint, but what we don't know is we don't have anything documenting what the other dimensions are gonna
What's
be.
the height requirement, or is there a height requirement? Because
There
right
is a
now, I'm
maximum.
saying it's maybe,
25 feet there.
25 feet in this area?
25.
So it cannot exceed that?
right,
Yeah, or if the current structure was 30 feet, it could go to 30, but it can't, if the current structure's 24, it can go to 25. But
okay.
if it's 26, it can go to 26, but it can't go over that. It's-
That's fine.
So a statement just simply saying,
You wanted to write it on his
he
application?
could do it right on the
You
original,
have an
and that'd be
original
fine.
somewhere? I don't
Yeah,
know.
just initial it and date it.
Write it right on there. square footage profile or elevation will all be, will maintain the same as existing? Or if you increase in the height, say what the height will be, or what it is now?
Well, no, but I want to try to get as much pitch as I can on the roof, so I will say not to exceed the,
25.
right.
Should be fine.
The house is that fairly flat roof, do you think, right now? Or shallow pitch?
Yeah, I would say, because it's 30 feet, I would say it's definitely a 412 garage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, height of new building not to exceed 25 feet,
Yeah.
and what else?
Anything else about the dimensions that you would
Mm.
like to see?
No,
Changes.
all right.
For me, no, it was just that one thing, I had the same question Rich did.
Leo, did you initially date that?
Please sign it.
Please just put your date, just like if you had modified the check, this, thanks.
Thank you.
No, it's Nick's.
Craig, do you have any questions? Anything?
No, I know the house personally, so
Yeah, you've seen it before, right?
it needs to be done.
Yeah. It's been a little bit since I've been down there, but I can see why, for sure.
Okay.
Anything else?
Not for me.
We talked a little more about the control of the water coming off each of the roofs,
Right.
and
That's something I coordinate with Gary.
yeah, you can, sure.
Yep, and when, we'll, I assume, deal with this through a condition, and when they get when you get the permit, you'll get some written material describing it.
I would also assume a condition.
Yeah, I guess I would make a motion to approve the application with the condition that, stormwater on both the reconstructed house and the new roof on the garage, be handled in accordance with DEP best management practices.
I'll second that.
You don't have to stop this for a while.
No, actually, probably next fall.
Yeah.
I want to do the garage, soon spring comes, and then enjoy it through the summer, and then at the end of the summer.
Yep.
You know.
Are you planning to move there? Maybe.
Possibly.
You'll lose your good advertising out
I
front.
didn't mean it as a trick question.
I know, that's the hard one to give up, it is. But most of the stuff's on mine, but it's just, it's a prime spot.
Yeah.
Well, there's quite a prime spot right at the end of the,
Yeah, everybody sells stuff that.
right, yeah. You probably wouldn't like it me if I had 3 or 4 boats there. I try to keep things very small. Yes.
Yeah. So do you have any other questions for us
I don't,
about the process, what we're asking for?
you want the runoff?
No, we haven't yet.
Going to those, like, any of the DEP best management practices, one of which that we mentioned here is the infiltration part. That has been very, it's not a cure-all for every condition, but it's been popular, I can say that. And it is effective, so.
And some people have decided to go with so-called rain gardens that they get help with from the BRCA with, in terms of their design and even sometimes labor.
Well, I'll definitely, get as much education as I can beforehand, and then go over things with you before we start anything.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So no more questions from you? Any other discussion from the board on this? All those in favor? So it has been approved, it will be mailed to you.
Great.
Welcome.
Then we'll have the other piece of it, so.
Yeah.
I don't want-
Thanks, Gary. Oh, yes.
Take care of that foot. Do you have an operation?
Yes, well, I fell off my roof there about 6 years ago, and I had my foot fused. We did it Tuesday morning. It's a good time of year to do it.
Yes.
I had to give something up, and I couldn't give up hunting season.
Priorities.
Yep, I hear you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You get blue pen and black pen?
I was blue one.
Doesn't matter.
Do you want me to use the black?
I don't think,
Here you go.
the only one that cares about that is,
Oh, you do? Okay.
Okay, that's our only official other business, was to hear that one. Now it's, for the public hearing to answer any questions regarding changes to the, commercial development review ordinance as it has been presented. So,
Okay, I have questions.
sure.
The revisions to the commercial development review ordinance, they fall into line with the comprehensive plan that was redeveloped in the last year? Is that correct?
That was our intent in that. To answer your question very completely, a number of recommendations came out of subcommittees. They were categorized, and this spreadsheet talks about what they were. The commercial development review could tackle a subset of those. And so it's not every single recommendation that we can handle in one ordinance, but it is more than a dozen.
All right, well, reading through those documents, it seemed that there was a lot more emphasis in the final document, or the revisions, based on maintaining a rural character, as opposed to the way that the development plan committee started out, in looking at the possibility of growth, commercial growth and whatnot. It basically pivoted away from that based on a survey of a couple hundred people that basically said they wanted to maintain a rural character for the community. And the last time I was here, someone on the board mentioned something about wanting to avoid sprawl. I didn't see that particular word in any of the documents, but sprawl, I would understand sprawl. If anybody's been up to Farmington, you can see the Wilton Road, I would call that sprawl. Route 2 from Farmington all the way to Wilton is one business after another. And I've dealt with, the Farmington building codes and whatnot, and kind of loose in the way that they administer it. And so I can understand how it developed. So my question is, rather than, and my comment the last time was that the ordinance, the signed ordinance that was written into this draft document, basically, it's been my experience in 35 years of selling signs and actually implementing sign ordinances with communities, that if you make it too difficult, you're gonna get no participation or very little. And it might not be the ones that you want. And that, the way that this document has evolved, that one piece of it basically says no growth. And the way that I interpret 32 square feet is slow traffic. And if you look at slow traffic, 25 miles an hour, the village, even including the depot, another village, they're 32 square feet works because you're driving slowly. So it doesn't affect that, but mostly Route 27 is a commercial district, and 32 square feet is inadequate. The sign you have up front here is 2 pieces, 32 square feet each. Very little time to get the information, very minimal, unless you have an application for an outlet store like was looking to go next door. That all they have to do is put their name and they put out tons of advertising, then that's one thing. But what will not happen is you're not gonna get a pharmacy, you're not gonna get a grocery store. Town of Belgrade has 4,000 residents year-round, they have many more than that in the summer. And as a taxpayer, it boggles my mind as to why we wanna send people to Augusta, Waterville, or Farmington even, and Winthrop to go do their grocery shopping, to go to the pharmacy. You know, people live here year-round, and it doesn't have to be sprawl. The document that you have doesn't go far enough in the way of control. And its lack of control, the 32 square feet in the commercial district allowing illuminated signs, that's gonna change Belgrade Lakes Village, and you don't have anything you can say about it. As long as the 32 square foot is matched or not exceeded, you're gonna have lighted signs down there. You know, you're gonna, people are gonna come in, you know, quite honestly, I don't like the Sunset Grill sign. But you could have one after another like that. You could have gas station signs, you could have, you know, once you get one, you'll get another one, and you have a compact area that is commercial. So my question is why was the ordinance not developed in such a way to control growth? I understand avoiding sprawl, but what's happened with this ordinance, you're gonna avoid another convenience store, you're gonna avoid another, well, the first grocery store, you know, the ones that came by 2 or 3 years ago that didn't, you know, finish submitting their plans, that would've been a great little business. But if you're gonna have 35,000 square foot store, you want more than 32 square foot sign.
My question on it is, say that the local people don't wanna go to Augusta or Waterville or whatever, why won't a 32 square foot sign on each side alert the people who live here? Believe me, if there's a Hannaford in
No.
Belgrade, the people in Belgrade and Rome are gonna know there's a Hannaford in Belgrade.
No,
They're not gonna go buy it and miss it because it's on the.
If you've been to China,
Yes.
Hannaford does a store in China, they have a bigger sign than 32 square feet. 32 square feet on each side of the building fails, because it's the total of 2 signs, total 32 square feet. So that means 16 square feet on each side. That's nothing. You know, it just doesn't work. The numbers.
That's incorrect. It's 32 square
On each side.
on each side.
Yeah.
You're reading that incorrectly.
Well,
But that aside, one important distinction, just so, you know, we don't get all boggled up with apples and oranges here, is that this ordinance is not a zoning ordinance.
no, I
It does
understand.
not distinguish where somebody can open a business in town. It,
Well, that's my point. It
and
should.
the commercial, the comprehensive plan lays out recommendations along those lines, but this ordinance is not an ordinance that attempts to implement that aspect
Well,
of the
right, but
comprehensive
that's my
plan.
point. It should be. By trying to, I don't know, make a tweak here and there, it basically is gonna make the whole thing fail from a commercial development standpoint. You're not gonna get any, is what I'm saying. And what you are gonna get, based on the lack of limitations in the village district, is gonna change the character of that village. which is definitely stated as one of the key points, you know, because it has historic significance and there's not, you don't have any way of controlling it because you haven't written it in, you haven't gone far enough to do it correctly. So, again, that's in the form of a statement. So my real question is how does this get voted on? It says referendum, does that mean it gets voted on Friday and not at town meeting?
Yes.
That's our understanding. I mean, Gary might be able to answer that better, but that's my understanding, that's how the select board wishes to handle it.
The ordinances, from my experience anyhow, my understanding, the ordinances require secret ballot. That would be a Friday vote.
Friday night. Okay.
That's my understanding.
So based on 10 years of being a resident here, 90% of the population isn't going to know how to vote. So it's in my opinion, it's a bad approach at this ordinance to try to control things because it kind of throws the baby out with the bathwater. It may be time to consider zoning. It may be time, you know, I would, you know, from sprawl standpoint or lack of sprawl, I look at Winthrop as, you got 2 pockets of retail area and the rest of it is lakes and residential and whatnot, you know, that's not offensive. I mean, Farmington's offensive, you know. So, you only really control that with the zoning ordinance. This is not gonna control anything. And the sign ordinance is gonna screw up the village. You're not gonna be able to control that either. It's gonna take at least a year to change it back.
If I may, Peter, just again in the way of background or how we got to this point, the process we went through was, we looked at all the recommendations in the comprehensive plan that applied to this board and to existing ordinances and potential new ones. And we came to the conclusion that, and so we identified those that required amendments to this existing ordinance, which is what we're talking about today, the shoreline zoning ordinance, to the subdivision ordinance, and other ordinances. And those clearly were within the purview of the planning board because we administer those ordinances and implement them. Zoning, of course, would be an entirely new.
And shoreline zoning is state law.
Yeah, but, yeah, right, exactly. So, but we had decided that undertaking a land use ordinance, as it's termed in the comprehensive plan, or a zoning ordinance, which is, you know, really what it is, would be well beyond the scope of what we could handle. Because we're really primarily, as you saw earlier, a permitting board. That's what we do. That's our bread and butter. We're not really a planning board. And that at the level of effort that would take would be comparable to development of the comprehensive plan itself. You're talking a multi-year effort, probably would require a de facto committee, much like was set up for the comprehensive plan itself. It would require the hiring of a consultant, much as was done with the, and you know, for us to do it, we wouldn't be able to do it justice. At least that's my personal opinion, and that's the conclusion we arrived at. And so, you know, we didn't try to expand this into zoning. First off, I don't think it would fly in Belgrade in a million years, but but our effort was focused at making this ordinance consistent with the comprehensive plan, because the current ordinance is clearly not.
Under home rule, do you have the authority to apply zoning type standards within the commercial district? Can you put performance standards that would roll over into a full zoning ordinance? In other words, you've created districts, it's on the map, that there are commercial districts. Can you develop ordinance, performance standards strictly for those commercial districts? Basically, it's Route 27 and the 2 villages. Because really, in looking at the surveys, you know, the rural character of the town is not necessarily represented by Route 27, unless you get down into the village. You know, by the time you get down to, well, the far fire station, basically, you start going in. That has, you know, sort of some historic characteristic there, but I think at that point, you have to start thinking in terms of zoning, even if you don't call it zoning, to protect areas. There was a lot of discussion in the comprehensive plan about protecting historic characters, historic buildings, and so on and so forth. And this sign ordinance is going to destroy what is historic about this town, you know. I mean, recently, last summer, there was in the newsletter for the historical society, they're talking about L.L. Bean having a place down there, and his brother, I guess where the Village Inn is, that was his place, and so forth, you know, so there's history there. But, you know, the minute you put a lighted sign on there, and even Dave's stores, they got a lighted sign, it's kind of quaint, you know, the gas pumps and all that, but, you know, that harkens back to the 50s, I suppose. But somebody's gonna come along and you don't have any control, not the way you want it. So that's what I'm saying about not going far enough. This commercial district needs to be looked at. If you wanna destroy sprawl or prevent sprawl, this has done it. But it's also not going to do other things. And the fact is, because it's being voted on Friday now, it's probably gonna pass, depending on who turns out, and nobody's gonna know why. Probably those same 300 people that, you know, put on their survey that they didn't want any growth. You know, you could, you know, like I said, my view of planned growth would be like Winthrop, you know, a couple little pockets, the rest of it is residential, lakefront, very similar to Belgrade in that regard. And you can find places around that are like that aren't sprawl, but you can't control. I lived in Augusta when there was no zone. No control over sprawl, anything went.
You got Western Avenue.
Western Avenue, yeah, Western Avenue was beautiful, you know.
Does Winthrop have zoning?
I think so. I mean, you know, the time that I went in there, to apply for sign permits, they allow up to 100 square feet for signs, but they do have districts. So, you know, you couldn't have that same size someplace, everywhere. Like probably downtown is tighter, but usually I was on 202.
Denny, did you have something to say?
Well, just a few things. I wanted to comment on one thing that Paul said, under the 32 square foot, and I think, George, you mentioned that it was 32 square foot per side.
Yeah.
Well, under D, which is in that section, sign area and placement says no more than 2 signs, which in combination are not more than 32 square feet.
It's combined total.
But the
No, but it's double-sided, it's considered one sign, isn't it?
sign area specifically said, the definition of sign area specifically says, for 2-sided signs, only one side of the sign shall be counted towards sign area.
That's fine, but what I'm saying is, you can have 2 signs, right? No more than 32 square feet,
Right,
that's what it says.
Right.
Combined
So you can have one 16 and one 16,
Correct.
That's what he
on
was,
both sides.
Yeah,
so what he's saying is that's not sufficient.
A double-faced sign, you only count one side. But a single-faced sign, obviously, that's all you count. So you could have, like in the village, you could have a 16 square foot sign, let's say the Village Inn, perfect place. 16 square foot sign on the building, 16 square foot sign freestanding. Perfectly appropriate, right size. 32 square foot, might be tight, double face. But, you know, so looking at the village, the 32 square feet can work. You know, but out here, you know, 45, 55 miles an hour, it's just not enough. And like I said, any business, I mean, you just have to take a look at Christie's. Well, if somebody else wanted to come in, like Big Apple, they want to put a gas sign, okay, that's usually 6x6, Citgo sign, 6x6, they're already over. Want to put a gas price sign. Well, gas price signs technically fall under a different section. They're not called a sign in the state law, so you have to argue that one. But you get into a point where, based on the speed of traffic, you would basically discourage a business from spending $1 million to $2 million to develop a facility. And that's where I get back into the tax point, because you're gonna deny $1 million property or $2 million property from being developed just because of a sign ordinance that wasn't thought out well enough?
I guess I would, you know, the others weren't here when you came to our regular meeting last time, or the time before, but Rich made an excellent point. This was a non-issue for Dollar General. This is not an issue for them. They're there, they want to be there because their marketing studies say that that's a good place to do business. Not because, and the fact that the sign is 32 square feet or 16 square feet doesn't matter an iota to them.
Being between the town office and the post office,
Yeah, no, it's about traffic volume.
you have
Exactly.
pedestrians.
Not signs.
You have pedestrians, basically. I mean, that location, you know, this triangle of, you know, Route 11 and 135 and whatnot, this is different.
I mean, in 2016, you know, signs are not how people advertise anymore. It's antiquated. You know, it's just for a location.
No, I disagree with that. And the reason why I say that is, I went through 3 years of virtual hell trying to get some sense made out of signs in the state of Maine. And we put together a whole bunch of issues surrounding signs, and I was being called anti-environmentalist and all of that by people from all over this area, and all over the state. Paul and I went through this misery. And all we were trying to do was make some sense out of a really poor set of sign laws in state law. But that's that issue. On an issue of, when I'm getting back to the point when you asked me if I had some issues, right? Historical area, when I was town manager, I was constantly confronted with this issue of signs, right? We don't want the, especially in the last couple of years when Steve's Appliances putting the sign down there. We don't want those signs. We gotta do something about that. Talked to the town select board at the time, I think it was the last year I was town manager, and said, perhaps we can draw up a sign ordinance, purely a local sign ordinance, that kind of allows for commercial businesses to do their thing, because I don't wanna stop development. I'm not an anti-development person, but also protects areas within our town, like the village, from having these kind of gaudy signs. In fact, I think I was quoted in the paper, is we have to decide what we want to be when we grow up. Do we want to be in Old Orchard Beach or on the lake? Right? So I think part of, well, and I wasn't here for all of what Paul said, but I think part of what we might be able to do in solving the problem is if we could come up with a sign ordinance, something that would be, it doesn't have to be part of this, or it could be, but something that makes sense for Belgrade. And I was willing to work with Paul on that. At the time, the select board didn't want to entertain that. I've talked to the business community, several people in the business community, Belgrade Lakes Region Business Group. I offered to develop a sign for that. There was, because it's a regional business group, they didn't really want. But there are people in town that I know that would be very upset if the village started setting up lighted signs like you see. Now, I don't think Hammond, that's not a problem for people. But seeing that go for the village, or in the village.
Well, it was when it was flashing and changed every couple of seconds, because DOT got inundated with
That's right, because that's DOT's
complaints.
law. But, and so is Christie. Both of those signs are in violation of DOT's sign law. But a sign ordinance, a local sign ordinance, to solve that problem, right?
Well, you know, to respond to your basic point, Danny, which is a good one, you know, what does Belgrade want to be when it grows up, or at least for the next 10 years? The comprehensive plan answers that question. And what the comprehensive plan says is it doesn't want Belgrade to be Route 2 in Wilton. Now, this ordinance is not a zoning ordinance, so it doesn't deal with sprawl in the sense of, you know, mini malls all up and down Route 27. But it definitely doesn't want Route 27 to look like hell either.
No, I don't wanna build like
And
that.
part of hell is having it look like New Jersey with bright signs all along, big, large, bright signs flashing.
Already got it. I
We
mean,
got it because we haven't got a sign ordinance that deals with it.
there you go.
It's,
So if I may, Paul, last time you were here, I recommended that you go to the select persons and voice your concerns about having a sign ordinance.
Well, you said that it
So
was coming
if,
back here.
if I may,
Yeah.
that would be the direction to go, because if we as a planning board, we get our direction from the select persons to do anything like that, or for the development of an ordinance. So I'm holding true to that. So whether it's you or Denny or anybody else that would go to the select persons to say, is it in the town's best interest to develop a sign ordinance? I think if that's the direction we wanna go as a town, as a mature town as we grow up, right? Then that's the direction we take. And I have to keep this all in perspective too, relative to the timeline of this revised ordinance getting to this public hearing. We have another one in January, and then we have to be ready to go, our goal is to go to the March meeting. The time, we are at the 11th
You
hour,
have to
it's
go to
like
the select board to
11:59
issue the
right
warrant.
now.
Is that right?
You can understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's- We have like zero time to do anything else about this right now.
Will the select board have the authority to remove this from the draft? It's still called a draft.
We question.
No, I think the select board doesn't have to put it on the warrant if they don't want it on the warrant.
Yeah, they can
So they could just say no.
kill it,
They
yeah.
could kill it. I'm not, you guys did a lot of work, I appreciate all the work you guys do all the time, I'm glad I'm not sitting on that board, right? It's a tough board to be on, I was on the appeals board, I know, that can be stopped, but it's, for me, I think maybe your suggestion, would probably be the better one, and that is to go to the select board, look at developing a sign ordinance that meets at least my concerns, or our concerns, our collective concerns as a community. And maybe we can do something along those lines. Certainly, we don't have a zoning ordinance, and maybe that's what we should be actually working on at some point. I do have another point I wanna make on the proposed ordinance. In here, you talk about meetings replacing public hearings, am I not mistaken?
That's correct.
Just for commercial development?
Yeah. So let me ask you the difference between a meeting and a public hearing.
So you wanted to know, like,
Yeah, I want
what
to
is
know
our?
what-
Oh, that was the question.
Yeah, that's the question.
Um,
Basically, we were advised by KV Cog that there's essentially none.
right,
And why hold a hearing on a different day, than your regularly scheduled meetings that are publicly advertised, and with the likelihood that nobody's gonna show up?
Well, that may be, but my understanding of a public hearing is that there are specific legal notice requirements, right? As opposed to a meeting.
Well, and Denny, did you see that we've expanded the notice requirements?
Right.
They're far more effective than anything we have now.
It says a minimum of 7 days. Right?
Well, and also, currently abutters are not notified,
they
and we've
should-
expanded
I
it,
saw that.
much like Augusta, to 500 feet.
Right, I saw that, and I think that that's appropriate. I just don't know if 7 business days by first-class mail is appropriate. It depends, some people might not be here, it might be away for a week or 2 weeks. Now, I know you can't cover all aspects of it, but,
On one hand, you're trying to provide comment to the butters and everything, at the same time, you make it too long, the people get criticized for holding up to the guy who wants to build his development
Doesn't,
because he wants 15 days or whatever.
Doesn't Augusta also put out a lawn sign
Yeah,
that notifies people as soon as the application is submitted or
Yeah.
whenever?
yeah, they do.
Schedule.
Yeah, we actually discussed that,
Yeah.
whether the town wanted to get into the business of owning signs.
well,
so far.
I just think there are some situations where someone who, in 7 days, might not be around in time to get the notice and might not be able to react. It's a note, and I know notice issues are always a problem, having
Yeah.
worked for DEP.
And of course, the flip side of that too, as you probably well know, is you give people too much notice and they forget about it.
That's exactly right.
Well, this meeting had 2 entries in the Kennebec Journal. Is that normal? I mean, usually it's once a week, legal notices, but there were 2 this week about this meeting.
Well,
And that raises another question, because on my road, I see Kennebec, I get the Kennebec Journal, because I lived in Augusta, but some people gravitate towards Waterville, and I'm not sure they necessarily put the same notices in.
I'm not sure of that either, but
To be honest with you, we operated on the basis that nobody reads legal notices.
Yeah, I know. You're right, but it's a legal requirement.
Yes.
It's an antiquated legal requirement.
Right.
I talked to, 4 businesses, 4 people associated with businesses, when I got an understanding that this was up. I think Paul noticed me, I don't follow this stuff, so, and I'm really not gonna be impacted by it from a business point of view. But none of them had heard about the fact that this notice was going forward. And that's within the village.
We've reached out to the Belgrade Lakes Regional Business Group. Myself and another member met with them,
Well, that may be, I'm just telling you, they didn't,
and they got notices, an invite to the public informational meeting, which
Yep.
is the point in time where we could get comments and respond to them and make changes still. And nobody showed up.
How about the Friends of Belgrade Lakes?
that's not a business group.
It is not a
Yeah,
business group.
But
It's an interested group.
yeah, I mean, as you know, there's quite a bit of overlap there in terms of the business membership.
There is.
You guys know, there's only so much you can do. You can't get the horse to the water trough if
The other
they don't wanna
part is
drink.
expertise. You know, you said that most of your recommendations, you went to KV Cog and,
Yes.
you know, they drafted.
Yeah,
some
they were our
things.
consultant.
You know, I hate to say it, but the government does know, well, they know about this much about business, right? And so they were about control. And so usually you get somebody that doesn't know anything and they say, oh, this works. You know, I've had to rewrite ordinances in towns, you know, like I think I mentioned the last time. Bar Harbor was the first municipality in the country to implement a dark sky ordinance, banning internally lighted signs. Well, they changed it because of a museum, and they didn't know how to do it. I wrote the change. But if I'd been there 10 years earlier, they wouldn't have listened to me. You know, they were listening to whoever they were listening to. But it had a negative impact, and the only time that they listened, they weren't listening to businesses, they were listening to a museum, which was an attraction for the community. So you have to look at every side, and oftentimes, nobody has the information. I mean, I live here. 10 years ago, you were in the planning board.
Yep.
I think I went to the planning board
Yes.
and tried to draft an ordinance, and it was too much for anybody to take on at the time.
Right, but what you brought forward was excellent, and it was such food for thought, and we had discussions, we talked about some of the signs that were around at the time, one of which was across the street, and we had, I think, excellent discussions about it, and I still have some of the same information you gave me then,
You know?
about driving speeds, changing rates, all that stuff, so it's great information, and I still think, I'm gonna get back to this, going to the select board to find out if a sign ordinance is due, it might be the path for our town going forward. Because the good news is this, no matter what we do with this ordinance or any other one, they can all be revised again. So should it be that in 2017, everybody says, by God, we need a sign ordinance, great, let's get one going. But we're at a point where we've worked for more than a year to get something revised to bring to the town to vote.
I mean, you made a really good point last time, that you were here, that there becomes sort of a bifurcated system. This ordinance only applies to new commercial or non-residential development. So you have one set of standards for them, for new businesses, say. But there's nothing for existing businesses, and that's where a sign ordinance could cover that loophole. So, Christie's could put up a sign just, a gazillion feet in size if they wanted to. And that would be fine, because this ordinance doesn't apply to Christie's unless they decide to do a major expansion.
But I think that's one of the problems. I think that new businesses are gonna look long and hard. Now, I disagree with you that signs are passé, that nobody's really reads them anymore. I read lots of signs. I go down the road looking for a gas station, I look for a sign. And I think people still read signs, and I think they're drawn into business by signs. So you're talking about new businesses that will have no real capability of putting up a sign that will attract customers. That kind of bothers me a little bit.
Well, in fact, that argument about everyone having GPS and all of that, that came up repeatedly 6 years ago, 5 years ago. People don't need signs anymore.
Well, let me tell you where I heard that, Gary, from the Maine Development Foundation.
Yeah, I'm sure you.
Okay.
I don't care, I still use signs.
That by and large, their marketing studies show that people do not use signs to make decisions about what they're gonna buy, where they're gonna buy it. They make those decisions based on all the other advertising they receive by other media, and then they just need to locate the business.
Well, that may be true when you're targeting a product or service. When you drive through Belgrade, let me give you for an example. You may have been on vacation on the coast and you're down in Rockland and you wanna go to Sugarloaf. Well, now you're gonna drive right through Belgrade, you would have anyways. But with the new bridge in Augusta, you're likely to drive through that way. And you're gonna drive through Belgrade and I suppose you could be punching in ice cream, you know. But the idea is that regardless of whether people do that, impulse purchases. I tried to get an ordinance passed that would have benefited the rest area for the turnpike in West Gardner, because they were losing money, they were losing $1 million a year in the place. And, because they had 19 signs that the DOT and the Turnpike Authority put up, and it wasn't good enough because you couldn't see it.
The dumb thing was, they built it a half a mile from the
Yeah.
turnpike.
Right, that's right.
Somebody
But-
forgot about location.
Well, that's right, so if you have the location, all you need is a nudge to turn the wheel.
32
And
square foot
it's an
sign.
impulse to do that, just say, oh, by the way, you know, driving down, if you drive out of state, right, and they, operate differently, but if you drive through Massachusetts and Connecticut, how often do you drive down the road and say, oh, there's a rest area come up, does anybody need to stop? I'll probably stop for some gas if that happens. That's the conversation that happens, and then pretty soon you end up staying there and you have a meal. So the impulse to stop only happens after you get clued into the fact that it's an easy stop. So missing that point for Belgrade would, again, eliminate an opportunity for another business. But the idea of controlling business growth, I understand, and sprawl, I understand. Everybody should take a ride out to Route 2, no question. You don't want that here.
Right.
Or Route 302 in Wyndham, wherever.
Well, it's coming here, and I think at some point in time, we're gonna have to really seriously look at how we get it back. It's coming right up Route 27.
Agreed.
You know,
Agreed.
So
I mean,
Right.
what I said about signs really is irrelevant to this
No, that's-
discussion. What is relevant is what the comprehensive plan says. And there's discussion in there, and this all came from the business community here in town, about Route 27 serving as a corridor to not only Belgrade Lakes Village, but the region in general. And what people see in this corridor helps them make up their mind about the region and how desirable it is as a tourism destination and as a place to even live. And so one of the things we try to do, again, we can't control under this ordinance where people place businesses or other non-residential uses, but it's just a matter of, can you mitigate the impacts on the passersby as well as neighbors and the community at large, including the town, in terms of whatever costs it might impose on the town for services. And and so, you know, hence the emphasis on vegetative screening, hence the emphasis on smaller signs. You know, we wanted to be more like Freeport than we did Augusta.
If I could, just because we could go all night talking.
Sure.
And I think the suggestion that we go to the select board, we have a select person here, he understands at least a couple of our concerns. You have a difficult position, but perhaps we can go to the select board and look at a sign ordinance, which can be adopted and put on top of this and actually become the effective ordinance versus the passages you have in your, in this particular, on signs. So probably we should look at doing that, and so I appreciate that.
I would just,
So-
Denny,
so
I would
this
just
is
encourage
not-
you though to include a lot of the businesses down in the village, because they're gonna have a very different view than you do.
Well, some that I've talked to don't, but having said that,
Yeah.
I've talked to them and said I wouldn't go forward unless they wanted a sign ordinance, that they would have all of their input. I mean, that's the whole thing, is we've gotta meld, not just the future potential for businesses coming up the highway with big signs. We've gotta meld that into existing signs.
Right.
I mean, existing businesses and their desires for signs. And I can tell you right now, there are businesses down there that don't want those flashing signs.
Oh, tell me about it. I heard all about it, because I was on the Economic Development Subcommittee for the Comprehensive Plan, and I was the only non-business person there. And, you know, when we talked about signs, I got an earful, you know, just hearing about it in terms of, and this is where the whole concept of viewing this as a gateway to Belgrade Lakes Village and the regional tourism economy
Yeah.
kind
I
of
think
came from,
I
so.
think a sign ordinance could solve the problems, the visual impacts of signs,
Yeah.
and the need for, you know,
Well,
legitimate, informative signs.
And the other thing we heard at the public informational meeting, which they're not, those folks aren't here, but was the concern for a black sky.
right.
That Belgrade not become a place where, you know, you could see from, 35 miles away in terms of the glow, from the glare.
We're already losing that, because I used to come, when I first moved here, I used to be able to go out with a
Right.
telescope with no problem.
Yeah, no, we
Now
are
I got
losing.
50 houses up the road, I don't know how much development.
Yeah,
there
no,
is.
well, and the impact from Augusta even,
You can see Augusta clearly.
I know.
but anyway, that's kind of public input we got at the public informational
All
meeting.
those issues can only be incorporated into a comprehensive sign ordinance, not something like this, because like I said, you've shot yourself in the foot with the village. You have no control over it, you're gonna have to catch up a year, because somebody's not gonna say, oh, I really like it the way it is. No, somebody's gonna wanna get a foothold and say, well, I can beat my competition. A couple of businesses have gone in and out in a year or two. Well, maybe somebody's gonna say, well, if I had a lighted sign, it would probably be okay, or at least a window neon, or at least to this, at least to that. You're not taking those things into consideration, and it's gonna happen. The negative part about Steve's is the fact that he changed the ordinance in that town to allow that sign to change every 2 seconds, which is permissible under state law, but the 2 seconds really only deals with a time and temperature sign, like, there's a time and temperature sign here, that's a changeable sign.
Right.
So, under that guideline, the way that this is written, none of the changeable signs can change
Once every 20 minutes.
20 minutes, including the
Just like the state law.
including the town sign.
Right, and town sign currently is in violation of state law.
Right.
Right.
Speaking of the town sign, and I don't know, I can't see it unless I'm within 150 feet from the entrance.
Yep.
It serves no useful purpose for me.
Yeah.
We
And
didn't,
it's red.
we didn't,
And black. And
guess
red.
what, Denny, we didn't design that. We only approved what was proposed.
I don't know who put, did you decide?
I did, it could have been white, they had the option, they didn't want to spend the money.
I know.
They've had the money.
So,
I know, you had to go.
Anyhow, I think that, Paul, do you wanna get together and talk about a sign ordinance and?
Well, my only vested interest is that I pay taxes, and if there's no commercial development, my taxes as a lakefront residential property owner, I got a 20% increase the last time we had a reevaluation, and I didn't like it.
I didn't like it.
Yeah, you don't
Right.
like it, you're not on the lake. But the point is, though, is that some commercial development can serve the 4,000 people that live here, and that would be desirable for doctors that are going to work at the new hospital. They want to live on a lake. But, driving in and going to, well, they're not gonna go to Walmart necessarily, they go to Shaw's or Hannaford or whatever. It's an inconvenience, they like to make things convenient. The older people who live in this town, which in some cases there's probably a fairly good percentage, pharmacy would be great to have.
Yeah, right.
So
And we heard that during the comprehensive plan, along with a laundromat for some reason.
But this area out here, the central part of the town, you know, already has commercial development, you could actually just draw a little circle and say, okay, we're gonna treat this way. And, you know,
And
because
treat Belgrade Lakes.
Belgrade
differently.
Lake's another way,
Yep.
and you really have to fine tune this thing, and the sign ordinance would do the same thing. Because right now,
Yep.
the sign ordinance will, you know, you're shooting yourselves in the foot.
I mean, the comprehensive plan doesn't make a distinction between one village area and another village area.
Right.
It treats North Belgrade the same way. And part of this was pressure from the state we had to come up with more areas for commercial development than was originally proposed in the comprehensive plan. It didn't meet state guidelines.
Right.
And so that's why the village, Belgrade Lakes Village, which isn't the only village in town,
Right.
was expanded to include the West Road and around the Castle Island Road, around the golf course, basically, because basically that's commercial development. And I think we did some expansion in North Belgrade as well.
We did, because we debated how far along we need to go.
Yeah, and as you said, you know, it reflects the fact that this, what some people in town call the triangle, this, you know, is kind of the center of
Every one
town.
of those areas, the village, the West Road, you know, Castle Island Road, whatever it is, the depot, Route 27 out here, I think you've identified north of 135 or south of 135 for electronic signs. I mean, you just have to do more. And I think if you write a correct sign ordinance, if zoning is nothing that anybody wants to consider for 10 years, well, the sign ordinance can at least be rolled into that. You could do that part of it right away.
And I think that's what they're suggesting.
And so, that would be my only thing, because this ordinance has the potential of doing damage. So I'm gonna do damage, like I said, in the, what I see 27 corridor, you could kill growth, number one. But down in the village, I tell you, not everybody's on board necessarily. They're more on board with making money than they are being loyal to the village, and you're gonna end up with things you don't want, and you can't stop.
Well, I'll go on record and say that that's, what you said is true in any situation.
Yep.
Whether it's this ordinance or any other one, right? Because those that wanna make money without their primary concern being an ordinance. So, we, as a board, has worked for more than a year to develop something to go to the voters that we thought would hit the sweet spot, have worked very hard at doing so, and this is what we're gonna be able to present, hopefully, with enough endorsement that we would get it to pass. I don't agree with everything that you said tonight about how it's gonna shoot ourselves in the foot, but that's just me. Every time you make a decision, there's gonna be good and bad about any part of it. So, I'm very thankful for what you've been able to bring forward, and I really think we need to direct energies that are appropriate to the select board to find out if a sign ordinance is the path forward. I believe it is.
So I've heard you say that twice, and I appreciate that, and I agree with you. And should the select board give their nod, I think if you needed support or help, I would be willing to. Would you be willing to help in that effort? In developing an appropriate sign ordinance for the town and talking to people to make sure that all of their interests are collectively included as possible. If you're willing to do that, but, you know, if the board comes to you and says, develop a sign ordinance, and you say no, then.
Well, if the board.
Well, I'm not sure we have a lot of choice in the
Well,
matter.
you know,
We have no choice.
I mean, we were
I
ordered
want
to
you
do a
to argue
mass
against it.
gathering ordinance, and we did that even though it wasn't on our agenda.
What kind of ordinance?
Mass gathering ordinance.
Right.
I won't even
An
talk
ordinance
about
for
that.
no good reason.
And according
Well, I
to
did too go through.
It went through.
Yeah, I did go through.
it did, and well, speaking of that, I saw an email today, it said something about we're developing a wind ordinance. or
Oh, we're
something.
not, that's, I think that what it
Rome.
was, is
Which is
standards.
another one, and I'm
Rome
kind
is
of,
Well,
Yeah.
you should
Well,
probably,
but,
Yeah.
but the guy from Rome said that, oh, I read that you guys in Belgrade.
Yeah,
did
yeah,
that."
and got it
I
wrong
didn't
from
know
the
that we were
newspaper.
doing that, right? And I can see other ordinances that might come up. And
Yeah,
just
it
think
just-
marijuana,
cell phone
When are
tower.
we gonna,
cell
Just
phone tower.
Denny,
when are
for
we
your-
gonna ban pot stores, anyway?
For your benefit, Denny,
Yeah,
the,
well, that's a problem.
our work plan is to, after we're done with this ordinance, we're moving on to shoreline zoning, because that's the other pressing ordinance in terms of the number of permits we issue. Under this ordinance, most of the we've issued quite a few permits this year. Two on Route 27, this facility and the place across the street, which is a good example of why the current
Why it
ordinance
doesn't
doesn't work. And then everything else is scattered hither and yon through town.
Who
You know,
enforces
used car dealers, auto repair shops, you know,
voting places?
yeah, I mean, in residential neighborhoods.
Who do you envision enforcing this, the current ordinance?
Code enforcement
Yeah,
officer.
CEO.
I mean,
And
There's
on
nobody
signs,
else.
You know that there's no one enforcing sign law. You mentioned that DOT comes around now and then, they do.
Yeah, no,
But there's a violation right down on the baseball field, which I'll never turn anyone in on because I think that's fine. But facing those signs out toward the highway is against state law.
oh,
oh.
And I actually had to, DOT came to me once and told me to have them turned in. I did, but then I saw that up on, at the, ball field up in, North Belgrade there, as you're going into Oakland, that new ball field there.
Oh,
They
yeah.
have all those signs out there.
Oh, my gosh.
yeah.
And
Doesn't say
so I
zero.
told the guy about that, and he said, I don't care, let them come after me. So I said, next time people turn those signs around, I'm not gonna say a word.
Right, right.
So,
What I was told by DOT was that they only enforce it when they get complaints.
Right.
And did they enforce the issue down along, across the school there? That sign issue down there? Did they put that big sign in down across from the Belgrade School, Central School?
Russell, where?
Where?
The automotive place,
Oh, Belgrade Performance Auto?
At his facility?
yeah, I thought there was a sign down there.
No, he put
He
a
put it-
off-premise sign right
Yeah.
in the corner where you turn.
Right.
Yeah, no, they did enforce that.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
did
no, I
that.
did move that. Yeah, I did that.
Oh, good, because there was a problem there, I heard complaints.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, Gary took care of that.
Yeah, well, the DOT doesn't, they don't necessarily do their job, but, like, for instance, for years, the golf course had a sign on Route 27, you know, facing over to, what is it, the community center.
Yeah.
That was in violation of the state law,
Yeah.
billboard law, because you're supposed to only place a sign at the business, place of business. And the place of business has to be, the sign has to be within 1,000 feet of the place of business, and it has to be on the access road.
Oh,
So it should have been on the west road, which didn't make any sense, you know.
We got that fixed up.
But, yeah, but we got it fixed by not doing anything, because the DOT fixed it after years of hearing.
After threats,
Yeah, well,
the threats I
took that, but nonetheless, some of these laws really need to be taken a look at, because like that law being changed benefited Belgrade, because it's a recreational facility. Somebody goes, oh, there's a golf course there? I mean, there's enough landscaping, unless you're really looking at it, you don't know if you're not from this area. But it's, what, the #1 ranked golf course in the state year after year? So, you know, these are some of the things that you wanna do something about Belgrade that's positive. The signs have something to do with it. The signs, do fill a gap. Not everybody is on a computer or cell smartphone or whatever to find their way around. And sometimes you're looking for something else, and this other thing comes up and you go, oh, wow, I didn't know this was here. And so, the ordinance, this ordinance will do damage in the short term. You can fix it in the long term if you want, but because it's gonna be voted on Friday, let's put it this way, when was the last time they didn't vote something in?
well, I can tell you.
called school budget.
No, well, I'm sorry, outside the school budget.
Yeah.
There was a town office that wasn't built.
Oh,
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And
That
that,
took a lot of effort.
They took a huge effort.
Zoning ordinance, 20 years.
yeah, and a zoning ordinance.
And the zoning ordinance. That was a long time ago.
But again, this is a piece that can be part of a zoning ordinance, but it's a piece that if you're gonna wanna do something about development and control some of the things that you'd like to control, you really have to have an ordinance.
Yeah.
And actually, it will take it out of your hands if it's a separate document. You could actually say that you could submit a plan and file for a permit and make money when you file for the permit, so. It doesn't have to come here.
So there are benefits by going this way, and that's why, pointing in that direction. So I guess I would just wanna make sure that we talk about this just a little bit, that should there be the nod from the select board to go ahead with the development of a siding ordinance, I'm thinking that that would take some time to do so, right?
Well,
if
the
you-
first
if
thing
you-
to do would probably be to pull a dozen or so ordinances.
Yeah,
I
we can pull
know,
them together and.
I know which ones are probably in the right direction.
Yeah, so, okay, and that would be fantastic, and, you know, to George's point about making sure to consider the opinions of the people in the, what's it called, the Belgrade, what's that?
Business group.
Business.
They-
The Belgrade Lakes Region Business Group.
Yeah, because they have voiced very different concerns.
Well, that ordinance wouldn't go to the voters till next March, correct?
Well, that's what I'm thinking,
Well,
so,
maybe, whenever we get it done, it'll be the first opportunity.
Yeah.
I guess I'm thinking,
Well,
it
when
might
you have more special meetings, then it would be thrown in as.
So it could be thrown into the November 8th,
what I'm trying to say is, that it's,
Oh,
or first week.
That's true.
to set expectations, it probably would not be for this March.
Oh, no.
Oh, absolutely not.
No way.
Okay, so I think we can agree that there are ways to make this better, you know, for the town going forward.
No,
You know,
that's-
and we have experts like you, Paul, and you, Denny, who have
Well, I'm
had,
not, she's the expert, I can get together with people, that's all.
This is
yes,
competition.
which is fantastic. And anything that can make this better is good. You know, so please go forth and do that. That would be wonderful. Much appreciated.
Change your sign only 20. Well, you need to call to get a thing repaired. It's a section that's out facing north, towards Christie's.
That's a sign you can't read.
Denny, just so you know, that, you know, so I'm perfectly transparent,
Three panels
my-
on the bottom right.
to get my vote on this board for any, you know, sign ordinance, I'm gonna be measuring that right against that comprehensive plan.
That's fine, that's fine.
Yeah, because
Because,
of
like
the
I said,
ways.
you know, we do not wanna be Western Avenue, we wanna be Freeport.
That's the whole point, I don't wanna be Western Avenue.
right.
And I raised that point in
Right.
2007, 2009, and 2010. I don't wanna be Western Avenue. I do want business development, I think there's an appropriate way, using the sign ordinance perhaps, if we're not gonna do zoning, to get what we want, achieve what we want, and still have the historic areas protected. So-
Because one of the considerations, of course, because we don't have zoning, is, among other reasons, just historical land use development patterns, is that we will always have, particularly in the village areas, a mix. It's gonna be a mixed-use zone by design. It's residential and commercial and other institutional, town office, whatever, schools. And so you have to put yourself in the shoes of the person living next door to that sign.
So
You
have-
know, you gotta walk in their shoes a little bit,
Well,
you
can
know,
be
and
more
what nuisance are
stringent,
you gonna
yeah.
create? So you gotta take that into perspective.
I
And
like
like the depot road, for instance, you know, once you cross, you know, get away from, Hammond Lumber, the old village that's there, that can have its own sign ordinance, you know, all the way to the corner out.
Yeah.
You know, so you
You
could
could be the
treat
same
it,
sign ordinance.
you could be the
So-
same sign ordinance as down in the other village. No internal lighting, you know, it's so many square feet, this and that. And if you have a zoning ordinance, typically a zoning ordinance will have approved uses. So you can limit, even
Yeah.
if you have mixed commercial and residential, you can limit.
And that's one reason why we couldn't do that here, because we couldn't parcel out, well, by lots, for example,
Right.
what standards applied where.
Right.
We could only do it in broad brush terms.
It's-
And you cannot do it otherwise without zoning,
Zoning.
was what we were advised.
This is so key to keep in mind. This is the backdrop for this entire thing, not only as it relates to the comprehensive plan and our charge to modify this ordinance, the shoreline zone ordinance, the subdivision ordinance, the minimum lot size ordinance, even the floodplain
But I
ordinance.
think the sign ordinance can lay down over it without having a zoning ordinance,
And I
and
think
it will achieve the results that you want.
So that's great, I'm just, you know,
One comment, in the village area, there's a self-limiting, growth limiting factor that's there.
Parking.
Not just parking,
Lot size.
it's access to, fresh water supply, because, in fact, Pete's Pig, something,
Barbecue, yeah.
barbecue,
yeah.
they couldn't expand because they have a limited amount of water, and they could only have so many seats in there.
Right.
And so, without a sewage or a water line down in that area, growth limit.
Right, and parking is too, because,
Well, parking is a huge problem.
because under this ordinance, we would not be able to fine in favor of a new business down there because, there's inadequate parking.
We faced it already with some,
Yeah, I mean, that's my worst fear being on this board, is that somebody comes in with a business that people really want, and we're gonna deny it because there's no parking.
Well, I offered a solution to the town a while back, but the select board, but that was denied, and that was the purchase of the 12 acres around the Belgrade Region Business Group and setting up a parking lot in there.
Mhm.
But having said all that, you can talk about all the solutions, we just gotta get to a point where we can agree on some framework overlaying this so that we can.
Yep.
All
protect
solutions require a lot of money. The sign ordinance doesn't. It doesn't solve those other problems like parking, you know.
Right.
You put a parking garage where the old hotel used to
Streetscape
be.
is all that.
$20,000 in parking spaces.
Yeah.
Yeah,
$5,000 a light.
right.
That's right. Don't hire the state, so. All right, well, my big question was answered, but then this goes to the voters. That's, and is this is under home rule, right? This is these things that, you know.
Right.
All right. My daughter told me that, she's a plumber. I don't know how that happened. Probably hearing the other side of the story most of her life. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Do we have to close the hearing?
It wasn't a hearing,
Yeah, was it?
Was it?
hearing?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
You can't do anything about it.
Well, that's true, it was a hearing.
So when is the, select board?
Tuesday.
They're gonna be reviewing this?
No.
We were told it was gonna
But
be
you're
January
need to
17th.
review
Yeah,
in order
I
to
think
make
so,
it
yeah.
a warrant anyways.
Yep,
George, am I wrong? Was it, yeah, January 17th?
yeah, that sounds right.
Well, you get right to the point where you need to do that.
Does somebody need to raise the issue before that, so that we can be positive?
If you guys wanna come in and get on the, agenda, it's not a problem.
For Tuesday? Okay,
Well, you two attending?
just to get you to think about it.
Okay. Get you on, yep.
We got one vote.
Get what?
Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now
Thanks
it's
for coming in.
It must be zero now.
I'm sure.
Now
I'm
it's
sure it
getting
is.
cold.
Gentlemen?
See you later.
Thank you, thanks for coming in tonight. Thank you. Thanks. It was mentioned self-limiting. I had a question for the board to see if that, anybody would recall this. But, one of the reasons, or one of the items that we talked about extensively in the comprehensive plan was the amount of land that would be gobbled up anytime there was any kind of development. So we had total, right,
Right.
that we could develop, or maybe say it another way.
Plan called for a certain limit or something.
Yeah, the
Right.
plant,
60%
and it had to do,
or something.
yeah, it was the goal was to maintain 60% of, the town in open space
Right,
for the purpose of minimizing additional phosphorus loading into the lakes.
thereby mitigating impacts to the quality of the water.
Right.
So, just because Route 27 appears to, this is my own opinion, appears to be pretty open right now, regardless of how it might appear, there is a finite number of businesses that will end up being developed in town, whether it's on 27 or any other road. So, and I say that because, when a person is saying that what will end up happening is I'm gonna end up shooing a business away because they won't be able to have another one in town because there've been so many already. I disagree with that. I think it's a finite number that will only end up being here anyway because of the limitations placed, that we have, as a town, have placed to maintain the 60% undeveloped in town.
Yeah.
At the same time, that 60% is kind of a goal. I don't think there's anything that we have to stop issuing permits when it gets to 60% or.
Yeah, no, I mean, the only way that would ever, in a regulatory sense, could get implemented is if the town ever got zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quick.
Yeah.
It's,
I mean, the only thing that this ordinance in particular, but the subdivision ordinance, I guess secondarily, is, you know, is to, the general goal of keeping all the phosphorus on the site of development
Right.
and all the stormwater on the site of development, or if it is gonna go off the site, you know, like with the town office, it goes someplace like the cow pond down the street where it infiltrates into the groundwater.
The other limiting factor is no water, no sewer.
Yeah, right,
Said
that,
I said
That's-
For years,
That's-
and I
that's-
agree.
You're not gonna build a McDonald's up by Belgrade Central School.
yeah,
No
Right.
water, no sewer.
right, right, yeah, they don't wanna be on a private well,
Absolutely.
because it'll be a public well,
That's right.
and they'll be regulated by the drinking water program.
So,
Yeah.
so with what I think are both real and perhaps perceived limiting factors, at least currently, I don't see a mad rush to develop all kinds of property along the way that would then, coming into some kind of a contest about whether or not someone can do something just because of a sign. I stand by that logic. I guess.
Yeah,
I don't
I
buy the
personally
logic
don't
of signing.
I disagree with that, but, you know, Freeport's similar but different, you know, people go to Freeport, I mean, everybody knows about Freeport, right? You know, Ella Bean and all the outlet stores, but, you know, you look at the gas stations, they got very small amount of signs in Freeport.
It doesn't stop them from building there.
No, it doesn't.
Right,
I mean, admittedly, we're not Freeport, we don't have that attraction,
Again,
but still, you know, somebody's not gonna drive past a Irving station just because of the size of the sign, if they need gas.
Particularly when all the other businesses have the same signage.
Yeah, right.
So in that light, I guess what I'm trying to say is, at this point, I don't see, the size of a sign in the current ordinance being the limiting factor for the development of a business. I just don't see it happening.
This wasn't the reason why I was at a meeting of the Maine Development Foundation, but, you know, these are the big developers in the state, you know, they said the bigger problem is when you get saturation of signs. You get so many signs that nobody looks at any of the signs.
They can't.
It's just a blur.
Yeah, it's one big blur, and so you get this competition of signs, and it neutralizes all the signs.
Right, and based on that, we've already talked about these other limiting things. So because there's no water, there's no sewer, I just, and this other thing, I just don't see a mass development of everything right along these
Yeah.
roads.
I mean, it's gonna be small businesses primarily.
I believe, I
Yeah.
do believe there will be small businesses. And, you know, one of the things we talked about with the, was it Hannaford or whatever
Yeah.
it is that was built down
That
there?
had nothing to do with this sign.
It didn't, it was money to develop that turning lane
Yeah.
and,
$200,000.
right, for that speed limit that they had. That was it.
Yeah,
That was the limiting factor.
That turning lane at the new Dunkin' Donuts at David's Quick Stop was $240,000
Wow,
this summer.
that's a
that's
serious chunk
substantial,
of money.
yeah, that's some serious coin right
Did
there.
the developer have to pay that?
Jeff Damon, the owner of the store, had to pay it.
Wow.
Hmm.
Just, are they still selling regular coffee there too, or they get rid of it?
What's most important,
They gave up the regular coffee, they can't sell breakfast sandwiches, nothing.
oh, so that was all part of that code,
Yeah.
Contract.
yeah, right.
I went in there today for the first time to see how it was looking. I got a Dunkin' Donuts.
I heard Dunkin' Donuts pays them $17,000 a month, lease.
Hmm.
That's a lot of coin.
Yeah, that's serious revenue.
So the
Can see why they-
$240,000 can be offset by that?
Well, that's just for the lane. I
Yeah.
bought the house next door for $265. They did the renovations at the store for Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah.
As-
So they bought that house just so they could expand over
yeah,
on the side there?
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't,
Cause they came to the planning board in Augusta and their parking didn't work. It was totally messed up.
yeah,
They said, you're trying to fit too much on this property. So he went and bought that house next door. To
I
make it
wondered about that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, anyway,
back to, I personally, and Craig may have some thoughts in terms of signs and stuff, but, you know, in my mind, you don't have to have more than a plywood-sized sign to advertise that you're there. It just, no matter, if you're going 50 miles an hour, I can read that there's a, I don't know, lawnmower repair or something, or
You read
car
those,
sale.
you read those little blue and white highway signs to direct you how to get there, right?
Yeah,
yep, they're not 32 square feet.
Nope, and they're on 55, 65 mile an hour roads.
So, I'm still of the opinion that what we have will work for my vote to have this pass.
The last select board would agree with you, I don't know about this one. Who knows?
Yeah, I know, we may be all opposed to it.
you don't know what's gonna, you know, get Denny running around dumping on it or something. He can go to a lot of people, cause he likes to talk. Are we still on?
Well, they both do.
And they're out there.
Anyway,
So, anyway, no, we'll see.
I think the size of the sign has to do with rural character in my mind. You start letting great big signs and, you
It
know,
changes
it changes, yeah, it's not preserving rural character, you know, too big.
One of the things that we don't have here is any kind of like aesthetics standards
Yeah.
to go by. It's really best guess or consensus maybe, if you will, about anything, whether it's the size of this type of a thing or colors on a house or, I don't
But
know.
you know what? They don't in Augusta either, but they went through 4 plans for the new Dollar General before they accepted a plan that they
Really?
felt met neighborhood compatibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have that ability.
Yep.
That's a good point, though, Peter, because in the comprehensive plan, there's a recommendation about architectural styles.
Yeah.
I don't know how you get there, but, because I don't have any expertise in that, but, you know, particularly in the villages, you know, I think is what that was limited to, maybe, I can't quite remember, but, you know, I mean, potentially, we could have built that into this ordinance.
Yep.
I don't know how you do it, and I don't know that Chris knows how, but
Yeah.
Chris from KB Cog, but.
It's a touchy subject. I mean, that, actually, going back to the Freeport thing, that's how McDonald's
Yeah,
ended up having the facade that it does.
Yeah.
yeah, well, and that kind of speaks to what you were using as an example, you know, you press these companies and they can come up with alternate designs, and Rite Aid has too in a number of
I mean, the planning board
municipalities.
said, we can deny this based on neighborhood compatibility. We don't feel that what you're proposing looks appropriate for this
Right.
area.
Right.
That building had a flat roof, they made him put an A roof,
Mhm.
they made him put a shingle roof, they made him put a a horizontal type, siding, either wood or vinyl.
I can say too that, where I lived, in another state, they wrestled with the same sort of aesthetics or architectural, issues. And I don't know what they came up with standards, but that town, they applied it
Everywhere?
everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, they wanted the character of that town to be, promoted and maintained, whatever it might be, so it did, so if you're looking in the town, you wouldn't see wildly different,
Right.
you know, construct or designs.
Right,
You know, in the square, everything that was redeveloped met that look in the square.
I had this conversation with Becky's cousin, who's he's a landscape architect, but places like Bowdoin College and wealthy people down on Cape Cod are his clientele kind of thing, and University of Texas is a client. And he said it's a lot, his experience is, because he tends to work with the architects that come up with those, it's easier when you have a community that has a real historical basis to, you know, roots to it, you know, that has a large historic district or something that's looks historical. you know, Belgrade's kind of lost that in the 1960s already, you know?
Right, exactly.
Even in the village, you know, it's nice, but I don't consider it historical with the exception of the stone building and, you know, it's, you know, some of the, even a downtown Gardner has more historical buildings
Yeah,
than that, you know?
exactly.
It gives you a basis to start with, but.
Yeah, so that's the challenge I think that we face as a community going forward is we don't really have an identity that says, oh, we're known for like this major thing.
Right.
This is our theme, this is the thing we can, you know, stick a flag in the earth and say, this is what we're about.
Yeah,
You know?
no, the only thing we're about, really, I mean, is the lakes.
That's right. That is our biggest identity, is the lakes. You know, I think if you were to think about other major towns or towns you visit in the United States, you could probably come up with 5 or 6 and say, oh, this town, you know, it's known for this. This other town, known for that. For Belgrade, it's the lakes. It's not necessarily constructs
Right.
around, like buildings or something like that.
It's funny, you talk to biologists from Inland Fish and Wildlife, and they say what they know Belgrade for is all the, sort of the epicenter of exotic species.
Yeah. That have been introduced by bucket biologists.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's a little testing area.
Yeah, that's what happens. So,
Whoops, geez, where'd the wood come from?
yeah.
Where'd those alewives come, where'd the mud puppies come from, Kobe?
Yeah, right, right,
Yeah.
right.
I think-
Actually, it was the alewives who were talking about, you know, that they may have accidentally introduced them
Yeah,
with a stocking.
same with the pike.
Are they catching walleyes again one
Yeah,
of the
they
lakes
caught one
now?
on Long Pond
Did they?
No,
I haven't heard of one.
3 or 4 years ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, but they haven't recently.
No.
That's the
They
only
haven't
I
one.
mean,
had one.
The beauty of walleye is, though, that is one species you can exterminate
Yeah. I've
because
only
of their
one day.
breeding habitat, unlike northern pike or, you know, landlocked alewives.
The water up here isn't suitable for the walleye, so they can't reproduce, so what's in there is just left over from what was there. So I think the alkalinity of the water isn't high enough
Oh, okay.
for walleye
huh, I didn't know that.
to really take off. And
I see.
Oh, okay, so they probably need more calcium in the water or something.
I assume the crappies must have been somehow stocked. I know the crappies in McGraw and Salmon.
Salmon and North and
Yeah,
East Pond
Pond.
and
that's the ones.
Yeah,
Great Pond, and they're all through the chains now.
yeah.
Uh,
Were they?
So the biologists have done more playing around than anybody else. I mean, I remember meeting with, what's the head of them, lives on the Taylor's Woods Road. He sat right there and bullshitted me, right to my face. And, you know, because I was trying to get on the dam committee. And, you know, one of my complaints was they were stocking at the boat landing with the dam being wide open. So I approached him and I said, would you be willing to work with the dam committee on the stocking program so we can shut the dams down, because when you're stocking at the boat landing, the dams are wide open, the brown trout are just going right down into Long Pond. Well, they can't stock Long Pond with brown trout. Right?
Right.
So the story he come up with was, oh yeah, well, we had them all loaded up in the truck, and the truck went down and got stuck on that point road, that little camp road there, you know, anyways, yeah, so the truck got stuck there, and I just told them to go dump them at the boat landing. I didn't wanna lose them. Well, that truck must have got stuck for 3 years in a row.
Because then the brown trout ended up down in the.
I live on the stream. I know when people are catching the brown trout, I go to the boat landing, and there they are, going in a circle right at the boat landing, hundreds of them. So they were stocking Long Pond through Great Pond, because, you know, they just stocked it with rainbows.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well, they
I
had to
saw
go
that.
through the whole public meeting and the whole shebang.
Right.
And that's what he told me, to stock a new species, you have to go through a ton of paperwork. Wow. They were getting around it by stalking right at the friggin' boat landing, knowing they were gonna go down the stream and right into Long Pond.
You wanna see the rainbows right now at Wings Mills Dam?
Oh, really?
Walk out on the dam, you can see them. Not that big, just swimming around.
I was really surprised, I went to one of those seminars they put on about that, and I was really surprised that they're more tolerant of low oxygen, because the north basin of Long Pond is almost devoid of oxygen in August.
Right.
And apparently, historically, have competed okay with northern pike
Of course,
versus.
they're on with the brown trout, and they're actually easier to catch than the brown trout.
Right,
But the big thing is, they'll eat the alewives.
right,
See, the alewives are actually wiping out the smelt population over
right,
there.
right,
It's not so much the pike, I mean, the
Right.
pike aren't helping it.
that's exactly what they told.
But the
that's-
alewives are taking away the smelt over there, and that's the main feed for a salmon.
Yeah,
They don't like the alewives, even though an alewive is a soft-bodied fish. For some reason, I don't know if it's just too big, or it's just not
Yeah.
what they feed on.
yeah, well, that's kinda interesting, I never knew that.
And when they put the alewives in, they put them in to feed the pike on Great Pond, and they weren't supposed to reproduce. Well, all of a sudden, boom, they reproduced.
So these alewives reproducing in the lake, are they heading down through Long Pond, down the river?
They're reproducing in all these lakes now.
Yeah.
They're even in North Pond now.
That makes sense.
And,
Be easy.
you
for-
go out there ice fishing when there's clear ice, there's just,
Yeah.
I wanna say there's hundreds of thousands of alewives frozen in the ice, anywhere from that big to that big. We're drilling ice fishing holes, ice holes, and if you're in the right spot on
Suck 'em
Crystal
right up.
Springs, the alewives are boiling right up into your hole.
Really?
You know what I found out the other day? I didn't know it. But you can, a lot of the lakes now are, I know, I guess maybe most all of Kennebec County or something, you can fish as soon as the ice
Yeah,
comes in.
they're fishing
Oh, yeah.
now.
I always thought we had to wait till January to go over to like Minnehaha. Now I know why when we go on January 1st, there's no fishing there anymore. They're caught.
Wow, they can't keep them,
What's that?
Not with trout.
can't keep them. You're not even supposed to bring them through the hole, I don't think.
I don't know, I see an awful lot of Facebook pictures this week, of people catching fish.
Only on certain
Then you-
ponds, they re-rated some ponds,
Oh, okay.
so like McGraw, you can keep them.
Yeah, that's where I saw some.
Yeah, that's all stocked fish, they just come out of this, they put them in there and they want the people to catch them because the water warms up so much in the summertime, they die.
Yeah, I wonder how many, we're probably keeping Nick here on something he doesn't care about. They put all those trout in these ponds in the springtime. I wonder what percentage of them get caught before they keel over and die
Yeah,
when the water warms up in the summer. You know, Salmon Lake or whatever, they dump a bunch of them in there, and by probably July,
they go,
there's like, if you didn't catch them, and there aren't that many people fishing for them in the spring, you know.
Uh,
But anyway, should we do the minutes, or should we conclude the hearing?
If we have minutes, yeah, we should do the minutes and then conclude the hearing, yeah.
Should we conclude the hearing before we do the minutes?
Oh, I see, because then,
That was a formal hearing,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, let's conclude the hearing, and then we'll do the minutes and then wrap up our meeting.
Okay,
How's that sound?
sounds good to me.
So the hearing, hearing's over. Right, so let's get back to our meeting minutes. Everybody has a copy? Craig, you have a copy?
Yep.
Are we doing the minutes before we conclude the hearing?
Oh, so we need do you want a,
Make a motion, well, I don't know if we need a motion, or you
Let's
just
do it,
conclude
let's do
that the hearing's over.
I just did.
I second it. All in favor?
Yeah. All right, so, meeting minutes. From December 1. any comments?
I had two, I think, down at the bottom, the last paragraph. The board decided to have a public meeting, I think that's supposed to be hearing. We had a hearing, right, not a meeting?
Mhm.
Right.
Okay, and it's board rather than barred on the next line.
Hmm.
That was my only comments.
Craig, any edits or comments? George?
The only thing I had was a typo in the first line of the first paragraph, the second sentence, the board thought, there's a T missing. Board thought there was a lot.
Oh, on mine I have a T.
I do too.
I do
Oh,
too.
mine
You,
doesn't.
you got no two?
Let me look at the other one, maybe the other ones are fine. Oh, this one does.
You
That
fixed
one
it, you
doesn't.
fixed it already.
The one I printed at home didn't have it.
You had to
Anyway,
do
it's
that.
good. And I do like the formatting, you did a nice job on that, Nick.
Yeah, thank you, thanks for pointing that out, because after our recommendations and then including them in the footer, so you have the date and the planning board minutes,
Yeah,
and
no.
page one of one.
Quite a bit more businesslike.
It does, and, thank you for also categorizing with, new business and old business and keeping that going. I think we're in good shape. So we have some edits, and you've captured what those were. Anything else on these minutes from December 1?
No, is now the time to, Nick, you weren't able to find anything out about the
I
missing
just got an
minutes?
email from Mary, so I have some audio I gotta listen to now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it is
Okay.
the audio, but it could be the audio.
Because I saw some email traffic and there was some recommendation or a question or a comment from her to say, look at something.
There's like a live scribe audio,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah,
So I gotta
so-
listen to that.
Okay,
So hopefully I listen to it.
all right, let's keep our fingers crossed then, because it would be good to get back to those other meeting minutes. So, I would entertain a motion on.
Make a motion that we approve the December 4th, 2016, planning board meeting minutes, as amended? Or
December
as-
1st?
What did I say, 14?
Fourth.
Oh, guess I can't read, December 1st, yeah.
I'll second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor? Thank you very much. Question about minutes in general, and I haven't been out to the website, in a couple weeks. Are you able to post these out there in an area that makes logical sense and people can navigate through it? Yeah. Have any of you been out to the website at all?
No, I haven't.
No? Gary, you've been?
I have no, since it's been redone.
Formatting.
Yeah, great job on you and Anthony about helping revamp the site. What I saw looked great.
Make sure we correct it.
Thank you for posting these out there too, because that's very helpful.
Yep.
That one final, most of the things I find.
Let's call it a night.
Well, maybe we should mention
Oh,
it
okay.
here and.
We have an update.
I met this evening with Tony Otidy's wife.
Yep.
She is a medical marijuana caregiver, and she took a blank application, commercial development review. She wants to operate her business in the old bank, Skowhegan Savings Bank.
Perfect.
So at some point, she'll be bringing that in.
And she's a caregiver?
Yeah, licensed caregiver.
Caregiver, okay.
What does that actually entail?
She said it allows you to have, if I'm not mistaken, you have 5 regular patients that come in usually on a weekly basis. And then she said the 6th one is a rotator. He might come in this week, and next week it could be somebody else. Doesn't have to be a regular.
Oh, okay.
She explained that to me that way.
So it's sort of like a doctor's office.
Except you grow the product right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, why does that trigger the commercial development review ordinance?
Well, it's a change of use from a business occupancy to a medical marijuana facility.
Yeah.
I'm thinking if I didn't send that to the planning board, they'd hang me. Somebody would hang me.
Some-
Well, that part I understand,
Yeah.
but,
And it could be that after we look at it, we might say it doesn't apply, I guess.
Well, and I only raise it because it was a business. It,
Still will be.
I don't know what kind of traffic this would generate versus a bank or,
Six patients a week, basically. You know, and I may be wrong, she can explain it, maybe it's not grown there. Maybe that's just her business office, I don't know.
There is something about having to,
You're allowed to have 6 plants per patient in, I think, 3 different various stages of growth.
and there's some amount of control that there are standards for
Yep.
it,
Right.
that-
right, which, you know, we can't get into, but,
Right.
Nor do we care, really, it's just, they do their business.
yeah, it's, you know, whether it's that or a doctor's office, it's sort of the same to us.
Right.
I was just asking the question of how, since it's pre-developed and
Yeah.
was a bank, was a construction office,
Maybe if it's her office, it wouldn't have to, if it's like a business office, but if it's a grow facility.
yeah, I'd have to look at the ordinance frankly, but I was just asking.
Mhm. So, anything else, Gary, for updates?
No word from Dollar General,
No,
Take it.
nothing.
yeah.
So, I had briefly mentioned there was an email forwarded to me from Carrie, from that guy in Rome, and you guys, I think.
He's a planning board chairman, I believe.
Yeah, or
I didn't see it.
co-chairman or something.
I didn't see it.
No. And, so he referenced, you know, hey, I heard you guys would be doing something with that, was it wind power?
He must have saw something that talked about what we're putting in our commercial, our
Yeah,
amendments.
there was a story in the Sentinel, I know.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
that's probably where he got it from.
Yeah.
So that was just an email, and he may have been inaccurate and all that, but it made me think, whether it's that ordinance or some other ordinance, like something to do with marijuana or something, I don't know if other towns are tackling that with a separate,
Augusta just placed a moratorium.
Yeah.
so.
I actually have a little bit of insight into that secondhand, as you might guess, through my wife, because
Yeah.
she's been consulted by the select board. Do you know about this, Gary?
Yes, select board?
Yeah,
No.
and, by virtue of the fact that she went to a select board meeting for something else.
Yeah,
Um,
they brought it up.
But, and so they're talking about it and, a moratorium of some sort. And, I mean, Becky's advice was, there's no need to rush because besides, you know, the results having to be finalized, then there's time built into the statute for the Department of Agriculture
Yeah.
developing its rules. That rulemaking is gonna take a lot of time. There might even be additional action by the legislature required to approve those rules.
Yeah.
You might be talking a year, so and you can do a moratorium for up to 18 months, but you don't wanna do it too soon or your 18 months might run out
Yeah.
before you develop your own ordinance. Or make a decision about, you know,
Yeah.
whether you wanna allow social clubs or all that, you know, that you've read in the newspapers.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I know, but, you know, I said to her, well, interestingly enough, if some place like that wanted to establish and Belgrade didn't do anything else, we would review it under this ordinance.
Right, we would, right,
Right.
cause that's what we have.
Yeah.
So, and I just wanted to bring that up only because I haven't heard anything to say from a select person saying, hey, do you wanna consider, you know, developing some other type of ordinance? So, I just hadn't heard a thing, and I thought that was, maybe a little bit unusual, given the high profile nature
Well,
of the topic.
Becky had suggested to them that it would be better if the select board did that themselves because it was really a public safety issue.
Good.
I mean, that doesn't mean anything, but, you know,
There's one recommendation.
yeah. I mean, you know, it really comes down to, you know, does the town have a police department and how are you gonna, I mean, you're not gonna enforce it, right? You know, I mean, exactly, so.
Cause you got how much time left to do that?
have to buy a firearm. But
60% of Gary's time is to remain open space.
Yeah. No words with a rifle.
Yeah. So,
Peter, if there's a moment,
Yeah.
question that Rich and I were just discussing, there are a couple of still typos and like formatting, minor formatting things. I mean, they're not substantive. It's probably something that could be changed at any time, but I just wondered to know what your thoughts were on that. You know, it's stuff like spacing between sections. And,
to me, something like that, I think we still have a realistic time frame to be able to adjust those, right? And
I
because
would think we
That
could
would be-
fix up formatting. When we go to public hearing and final vote, we want this thing to be absolute, if you will, I think, so.
Yeah.
I don't know whether the best thing to, I don't know what your issues are, George, but mine, I commented on, made marks on red, because I read through the thing in preparation for, I figured I better read it once anyway. I marked it in red, and I think Nick can easily take my red comments and make the typo kind of changes. They're very, nothing really has to do with changing standards or whatever, but for instance, do you have your copy right there? Let me show you a couple of things that,
one of the benefits of the new draft is I can ask this, what page do we go to?
go to five first. This is really simple. Review criteria, at least in my copy, is actually on page 18 instead of 20. Development standards are on 20 instead of 22, and 40 instead of 47. So that's basically a very simple kind of thing.
so wait, the table of contents is-
Or is yours different than mine? I think we all, do we all have the same copy?
So page 5,
Mine is administration and enforcement.
Right, that's what I have
Yeah,
too.
go to review criteria. Is your review criteria on page 18 or page 20?
18.
Okay, the table of contents says 20. So things like that,
Oh,
you know, they're minor, but we ought to have it be what it really should be or something.
So I think what you're saying is that by looking at the table of contents, the proper reference to whatever article we're talking about
Yeah.
might be off.
It's
by-
off by a page or two.
Okay,
And
So-
something like on page 9, the word business days is just stuck there. It doesn't, it just needs to go. Because it doesn't, it's not part of the sentence. I think, I don't know whether Nick can put it down there when he was doing it. Remember we were talking about business days one time?
oh,
I
right,
think,
right,
And
right.
somehow it got thrown up there,
Yeah,
right there.
yep, perfect.
You know,
Is
these,
this something that you can tackle for us?
yeah.
So, so
Page
ref-
12 is the same thing, business days, somehow got thrown in there. And I could just give mine to Nick, I don't know what George has, but,
I haven't gone through it, but I can give you an example of the kind of formatting stuff. So go to page 33. And you'll see section 13 kind of just floating there.
right.
And the text really from the next page needs to be brought over, and that changes the pagination. So, you know, you need to do some of this stuff first before you amend the pages in the table of contents. But there's a couple other things too where, and I'm guessing, you know, from my own experience, I know how this probably happened. It was, you know, like accept changes in the markup feature there, you know, and the computer doesn't quite do it, you know. So I don't know if I can give you an example quickly, but there's some places where the paragraph is hasn't been indented or something of that nature. It's all formatting is what I just happened to notice as I was
Yes.
going through this. What I didn't actually read it like Rich did. What I did when I went through and I changed the page numbers on that bulleted list we
Oh,
had put
yeah.
together, because I thought we'd have a better turnout, frankly, because there was that article in the newspaper, and so I thought people would be asking. in the past, people tended to focus on these things because it was a prior handout. And that's just how I stumbled across it. But I could go through it, and if this works for you, Nick, and do what Rich did, and just highlight in red, you know, some of the formatting changes.
Yeah.
I think they'd be simple to correct.
That would be awesome. I'm thinking there's probably a page break on page 33.
Yeah, that kind of thing. That,
I'll give Nick mine. Give it back to me if you will, I'll put my name on it.
Great idea.
Because I've got a couple of things that I just want to ask how we interpret something at some point. Nothing you would change or
actually, yeah, I'll bring this into the office to you sometime, Nick. Okay, does that work okay?
Mine shouldn't take you more than 10 minutes.
Because, you know, if something doesn't look like right to the public, they, you know, some people will infer from that, well, maybe there's substantive errors too.
Right. We passed it out on. All right, I think that's it, 9 o'clock. We're
And
done.
we can't go any longer.
No.
There's an ordinance about that, isn't there?
Yeah.
So have you been fishing yet?